Pretty much everyone loves going to a dinner party where the food is delectable and the company is enjoyable and the entertainment is first class. Proverbs teaches that all of us are invited to attend two very different banquets. Lady Wise is calling for guests to come and dine at her table, and Lady Wild is also extending an invitation to hers. And we have to make a choice about which party we're going to attend. My name is Mary Cassian. Welcome to the Girls Gone Wise video book blog. We've come to the end of the Proverbs 7 story, which involved two main characters, the naive young man who lacked sense and the wily seductress who intentionally and manipulatively caused his downfall. Both of these individuals are examples of people who turned down the invitation to Lady Wise's banquet and accepted Lady Wild's invitation instead. The sage urged his son to pay close attention to the story. He wanted him to say no to wildness and yes to wisdom. He hoped that his son would be teachable and learn from the mistakes of the two characters. Teachability, a woman's willingness to be corrected and instructed, is the 20th point of contrast between a girl gone wild and a girl gone wise. A wise thing is teachable. She's eager to grow. She welcomes correction and training. A wild thing scorns instruction. She doesn't think she needs input. She really resists change. Throughout the book of Proverbs, the sage outlines the profile of three types of individuals who turn their backs on God's invitation to attend wisdom's banquet. The young man and the woman in the story are two of the types, but the three types altogether are the simple, the fool, and the scoffer. And Proverbs 122 mentions all three of them together in one verse. Lady Wisdom asks, "How long, O simple ones, will you love being simple? How long will scoffers delight in their scoffing, and fools hate knowledge?" The three categories aren't mutually exclusive. They overlap, but in general, they represent a continuum of teachability. The simple person is somewhat open to instruction. The fool is less open to instruction, and the scoffer, way on the other end of the continuum, is completely resistant and closed to accepting instruction. From the simple to the fool to the scoffer, there's an increasing hostility and resistance to learning and to doing things God's way. A wild thing is going to fall somewhere along this continuum. She's going to be like Simple Sally, Foolish Fran, or Scoffing Sue. Simple Sally is the female version of the young man in our story. She's simple. She's uninformed. She doesn't have the necessary life experience or know-how. She's naive. She doesn't see the danger, so she's easily taken in. Sally is the girl who gets herself into trouble because she hangs out with the wrong friends, or she goes to the wrong places, takes the wrong advice, and makes bad choices, simply because she doesn't know any better. Simple Sally doesn't think that learning is all that important, so she doesn't make the effort to figure out what's wild and what's wise. She remains uninformed and naive. Sally really needs to grow up and to give some serious thought to the way she's living her life. To grow in wisdom, she has to accept the challenge to learn. She has to get serious about studying the Word of God and paying attention to the pitfalls and dangers of sin and learning from the mistakes and failures of others. Sally, quite simply, has to stop being so simple. If she doesn't, she's going to become like her sister, Foolish Fran. Unlike Sally, Fran isn't uninformed. She's heard the message of wisdom. She's gone to church. She knows what she's supposed to do, but she's unconcerned. She just doesn't care. She thinks she's got life all figured out and under control. Fran doesn't take God seriously. If a friend warns her about the consequences of sin, Foolish Fran just tells her, "Hey, just lighten up. It's not going to happen to me." She thinks that she's going to be able to stop before she goes too far. She feels like she's got the situation under control. The thing that matters most to Fran is that she has a good time. She wants to enjoy herself. That's her number one priority. And she's reckless and careless as a result. She denies the danger. She thinks the consequences of sin are way overblown. But you know what? Fran's lack of concern is going to lead to her ruin. The more she sins, the more she'll be enslaved to the bondage of sin. Sin is going to lead to more sin and greater sin, and she's going to make a mess of her life. Foolish Fran is going to run headlong after the pleasures of sin until she hits a wall, till she hits a crisis point, and sin's consequences catch up to her and beat her down. And then there's a scoffing Sue. Sally's uninformed, Fran is unconcerned. Sue, though, is unashamed. She brashly insists that God's way is out and out wrong. She makes up her own rules. She doesn't care what God thinks, and she doesn't care what others have to say about it. Fran is probably a little bit more ashamed if she gets caught in her sin. Sue, on the other hand, is defiant. Now, we don't know exactly where the seductress of Proverbs 7 was on the continuum of these three profiles, but I think it's safe to say that if she hadn't already crossed over from being a foolish Fran to a scoffing Sue, she was probably pretty close to doing so. A girl gone wild listens to no voice. She accepts no correction. She does not trust in the Lord. She does not draw near to her God. That verse is a pretty accurate description of the wild thing. Simple Sally can't be bothered to listen. Foolish Fran doesn't see a reason to. And scoffing Sue brashly refuses. All three turn down the invitation of Lady Wise. Lady Wise has spread an amazing feast, and her only stipulation is that her guests be willing to forsake foolishness and walk in the way of wisdom and listen to her. The feast of Lady Wild is a cheap imitation. Proverbs says she offers stolen water and bread, and that's a veiled reference to illicit sex and everything else that God says is poison to our souls. Lady Wild invites you to indulge in foolishness. She entices you with the idea that sin is sweet and pleasant, but you know what? It's a scam. Her food is absolutely deadly. The choice is up to you. Are you teachable? Are you willing to listen and accept God's wisdom for your life? Are you committed to learning and making the necessary adjustments? How are you going to respond to wisdom's invitation that you've heard through the pages of the book and the contrasts between wild and wise? If you're a scoffing Sue, you'll respond with, "How dare you suggest my way is wrong?" If you're a foolish Fran, you're going to say, "No thanks, I've got it all figured out, I'm okay." And if you're a simple Sally, you'll pipe up with, "Hey, not right now, I'm kind of busy, maybe later, I'll think about it some other time." How have you responded? Lady Wise and Lady Wild are calling you to their dinner parties. You will eat at one of those tables. Whose invitation will you accept? Are you going to choose to be wild or wise? Thanks so much for joining me on this adventure. I'm going to finish up next time with one more session in our time together. So please come back as we wrap up learning how to be girls gone wise in a world gone wild.